Okay. Are you ready?
Ready.
This is gonna be an interesting one.
All right.
Yay!
Spoiler alert for Star Wars Episode 9 and Smash Fiction Episodes 1, 2, 4, 10, 12, 19, 26, 29, 31, 33, 36, 37, 46, 59, 69, 71, 80, 82, 86, 90, 98, 103, 112, 120, 123, 127, and 140.
Yay!
Okay, great.
October 14th, 2018. Maleficent looked up from her desk and scanned the headmistress's office, her office. "Who's there?" she said. A hand emerged from seemingly nowhere, pointing an ornate wand in Maleficent's direction. Then a second hand lowered a hood, revealing platinum blonde hair sitting atop a scowling face covered in glitter. "I am Angua von Uberwald, and your time as headmistress of Hogwarts is over. Hand over the tome, and I may let you keep your life." "That appears to be the Elder Wand in your hand. Guessing the rest of you is covered up by the invisibility cloak. And what's that on your face? Did you grind up the resurrection stone and make it into body glitter?" Angua growled. "Look, man, sometimes lightning rounds get a little wild, but we don't have time for that. Right now, I have a continuity hole to patch." "How charming. There was a time when the magic of the Deathly Hallows might have been enough to defeat me, but since I obtained the tome, I have become so much more." Angua reached into her cloak. "That's why I didn't bring the Deathly Hallows," she said, holding up a bobblehead of Walt Disney. "I brought the Disney Hallows." Maleficent's eyes went wide. "No, you can't. In the name of the most powerful force in the multiverse, the Disney Corporation, I sentence you, Maleficent, to be rebooted."
Oh, God!
The bobblehead in Angua's hand glowed bright white, and Maleficent vanished, sent to some new plane where her story would begin again, hopefully this time as a more sympathetic protagonist. Angua searched the office and soon found what she was looking for, a hidden safe beneath the desk. It was unlocked, and empty. There was no tome, and no clues to be found, but for a moment, Angua thought her keen werewolf nose detected the faint smell of hamburgers. Wow, what's this? Blasted gray landscape beneath a sky of endless churning purple darkness? Robble, this is almost as creepy as a truck stop McDonald's bathroom. Let's see, last thing I remember, I had just cracked open that safe in the headmistress's office. I assumed that was where she was keeping her lunch, and sure enough, it looked a little old, but it was without a doubt the biggest hamburger I'd ever seen. There was no mistaking that familiar smell of meat. I picked it up, and then everything got a little fuzzy, and now I'm here, wherever here is. I'll solve that mystery later. Right now, I'm hungry. Nope, not a hamburger. Not a hamburger at all. Seems like an ancient book made from human skin and bones. This is definitely going to need some very strong seasoning. At this point, the Tome of Eternal Darkness realized it may have made a mistake in choosing this owner. It would need to find someone new, quick. Last time, it ended up attracting a wizard who locked it away in a safe for years, and that wouldn't do it all. It needed fresh blood. It needed to reach further away in space than it ever had before, where no one knew what it was, and further back in time than it ever had before, back when people were theoretically far more gullible. It needed to go back to a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Smash Fiction, the podcast where we pit two or more fictional characters against one another in a battle of strength or wits, and see who would win. This week, Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Luke Skywalker versus Rey. The year is 4 ABY. After the defeat of the Galactic Empire, Luke Skywalker has returned to his home planet of Tatooine to finally get those power converters. His X-Wing touches down at sunset by the old Lars homestead, but before he heads into town, he takes a moment to gaze once more into that familiar twin sunset. The year is 19 BBY. The child of Anakin Skywalker has been in hiding for a few months now, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is still certain that, any day now, the Empire's going to find him, and he's going to wake up to see the Lars homestead burning. He's seen it in his dreams. But apparently it won't be happening today. The twin sun is setting, and all is well on Tatooine. The year is 35 ABY. Rey Skywalker is standing near the ruins of the old Lars homestead, buried in sand after decades of neglect. She has come to lay the lightsabers of Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa to rest in the Tatooine sands. Despite the fact that Leia isn't from this planet, and the only time she came to Tatooine, she became the slave of a giant space slug, but you know what? It's fine. We're not going there. 3 Jedi in 3 time periods, all looking at the same 2 suns, when suddenly they feel a profound disturbance in the Force. A great dark mouth that is rising up from below them, threatening to swallow them whole. The sands of Tatooine shift, and all 3 Jedi find themselves tumbling through space and landing on a blasted rocky plain beneath a swirling dark sky. Before them stands a trembling man in a black and white striped outfit with a burglar mask on his face and a book clutched to his chest. They don't recognize each other at first, until Rey imagines the wide-eyed boy to her left with a beard and a permanent scowl. Master Luke? No, just Luke, said Luke. Luke Skywalker, asks Obi-Wan, noticing some resemblance in the boy's face to his former pupil. Yeah, says Luke. Ben? After a couple minutes of drawing diagrams in the sand, the 3 eventually puzzle out that they're all Jedi from different time periods and are thus theoretically all on the same side. I've heard of temporal anomalies like this before, said Obi-Wan. I once saw 2 starship captains from different dimensions getting into a very strange pickup artist competition at a ball on Mos Eisley. Rey nodded. I heard the bounty hunter Boba Fett once ventured into another dimension while attempting to track down 2 elusive otherworldly fugitives at once and never returned. Luke felt a pang of recognition, hit by a vague recollection of a time when he and the rest of Rogue Squadron got into a fight with some strange-looking furry aliens, but the next day he had a splitting headache and couldn't really remember it all that well. He decided not to bring it up. Instead he said, but wasn't all this astral quarrel supposed to be over by now? Wasn't there a squad of stormtroopers who got into a fight with some red-shirted fellows on the Protector that ended in dodgeball? And also, who's that guy in stripes? Ben, is that your master? Obi-Wan scoffs. I presume he's the one who brought us here. At this point, the 3 are interrupted from a voice within their own heads. Fools, I am the one who brought you here. I am the Tome of Eternal Darkness, conduit to the powers of the definitively godlike being known as Mantarok. Obi-Wan speaks up. And you can use the dark side of the Force to speak into the minds of people anywhere in time and even merge 2 separate times together? The Force in the future must be capable of doing all sorts of things it never did in my time. You have no idea, says Rey. I can commune with all sorts of intelligences across time and dimension. The first being that I connected to in this way wasn't even biological. It was a self-aware computer system known as Skynet, and I showed it how to manipulate space-time to better defeat its enemies.
Oh my gosh. So it didn't invent time travel after all.
Are you saying, said Rey, that you invented time travel? Indeed. I've been behind it all. Skynet's disruptions into the continuum ended up creating a ripple effect throughout the multiverse that weakened the walls between worlds. It wasn't my original intention, but it has caused a tremendous amount of lovely chaos throughout existence ever since, as people from different worlds have been crossing paths unexpectedly, frequently ending in battles of strength or wits or... Enough of this, said Obi-Wan. The idea that, after all the multiverse has been through, we're suddenly at the last minute going to resurrect an old villain and claim that they were secretly behind it the whole time is ridiculous. I don't care who you are, just tell us what you want from us so we can be on our way. I see that you are strong in the ways of magic, or the Force as you call it. Any of you would make a fine bearer for me, but only one of you shall be found worthy, the one who can defeat the other 2 in combat. Well, we're not doing that, said Rey. That's just stupid. I've never owned a book before in my life, and I'm certainly not going to start now, said Luke. Indeed, said Obi-Wan. I mean, we certainly need to make sure that this dark artifact doesn't end up in the wrong hands, but I've sworn to protect Luke Skywalker. I'm not going to kill him and his student just over some tome. Exactly, said Rey. Besides, I mean, it's not like you'd actually be able to kill us. I mean, no offense, but I'm pretty sure I'm better with the Force than either of you. Child, I'm without a doubt the most experienced one here. I refuse to fight you about this, but if we did, it would soon become quite clear that I'm the most qualified to protect the book. Like you protected the Jedi Order from falling into the hands of Palpatine? Asked Rey. I don't want to be that guy, Ben, but I mean, I beat Darth Vader, and he kinda killed you, so... You would now, said Obi-Wan. Spoiler alert for your life. Sorry. Fine then, how about a little contest, said Obi-Wan, forcefully. A friendly sparring match. Not to the death necessarily, just until someone yields. Till one of us demonstrates our mastery of the Force such that the others surrender. Maybe one of us loses a limb or two along the way, but it's amazing what they can do nowadays with cybernetics. Fine by me, says Rey. If we have to, says Luke. With that, 3 lightsabers ignited. 1 yellow, 1 green, and 1 blue. Obi-Wan versus Luke versus Rey. It starts as a friendly little fight, for the 3 don't realize yet that their combat prowess isn't the only thing being tested. For as they fight, the tome works its dark tentacles into their minds, pushing them to fight harder, fight dirtier, and get angrier. So we're not only seeing who is going to be the first Jedi to convince the other 2 that they are the most worthy to bring home the book, we're also testing which Jedi will be the best at resisting the corrupting influence of the Tome of Eternal Darkness. For if one of these Jedi turn to the dark side in order to defeat their foes, they may win this star battle, but they will lose this star war.
Oh, man.
But who shall emerge victorious as the greatest Jedi of all time? I don't know. I find myself now at the end of an era, my most difficult battles behind me. As a bonfire blazes nearby and the sounds of Yub-Nub echo through the trees, I gaze into the darkness, uncertain as to what the future shall bring. Fortunately, 3 Force Ghosts appear before me, offering some much-needed guidance. Also, I judged the Sith battle we did for Force Awakens and the Grey Jedi battle we did for Last Jedi, so, gotta complete that trilogy. That is why I, Claire McClunky, will be your judge this week.
Claire, you stole my intro stinger.
Oh, deal with it, nerd. Representing Rey Skywalker is Dan Solo, Dando Calrissian, the man who puts the Dan in pedantic, Dan Mulcairn.
Yeah, Claire stole my opening zinger, so I guess in this specific case, regarding McClunky, we can say that Claire shot first.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's great. Representing Luke Skywalker, our own resident Mon Megan, aka Lobob, aka Admiral Hugs, who has launched a veritable rogue squadron of rebel ships, Megan Bob.
Aw, smash fiction. But I was going into Tosche Station to pick up some power converters.
And representing Obi-Wan Kenobi is a true Smash Fiction all-star, cooler than Droopy McCool, the guest hostess with the mostest from Geonosis, the Medina from the Cantina, the Rafaela. We asked him if he wanted this space in our last match, and he informed us that he was not throwing away his slot. It's Rafael Medina.
It's over, advocates. As far as bullshit's concerned, I have the high mound.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
If it is not already clear, 3 out of the 4 of us are suffering from some pretty intense head colds. We spent time with each other over the holidays, and clearly that was a mistake, so
Yep.
we're all kind of fighting the pull of the dark side here.
In order to see who's going first this week, I got a 6-sided chance cube from Watto and marked it with the 6 different possible ways to order 3 characters in a 3-way match. The advocates didn't know this, but one of the sides was actually secretly marked skip the argument and just let Claire talk for an hour, fixing more Smash Fiction continuity holes. And the cube was heavily weighted to always land on that side, but I think someone might have been using some force powers because for some reason, the cube landed on the side marked Obi-Wan, then Luke, then Rey. So I guess we're going with that. Team Obi-Wan Kenobi, you have the high ground, by which I mean you will be going first this week.
Imagine the incontrovertible pinnacle, the absolute apex of Force users, and the terrifying visage of Anakin Ebenezer Darth Vader Skywalker should creep into your nightmares. Imagine him in his prime, unencumbered by age, affliction, or handicap, overclocked by his own hatred, rage, and fear. Now, imagine being the Jedi who took all that piss and vinegar and made it suddenly very concerned with the ADA compliance of his favorite shopping locations. Were the 3 to cross blades, Obi-Wan Kenobi is the one who would emerge victorious, as he is a fearsome convergence of experience, power, and, most importantly, training, whose entire Force career was forged and honed by living in an era absolutely lousy with stupefyingly powerful Sith and Jedi. Kenobi, unlike Luke and Rey, has the benefit of traditional Jedi training, ingrained in the ways of the Force and lightsaber combat since age 3, before he'd even mastered the art of applying footwear to the correct feet. By the time he's Luke's and Rey's respective ages, he's already a Jedi Knight and has Dewey Coxed a Sith assassin before either of the other 2 has even played with Anakin's lightsaber, if you know what I mean. By his second film, having studied under truly legendary Jedi Masters, and comparatively before Luke had even crossed blades with with a living combatant, he was already described to be as wise as Miss Piggy and combat skilled as Jules Winfield. Ben's era was so infested with Force talent that you couldn't throw a Baby Yoda without it bouncing off some comedically overpowered character, which not only enriched the caliber of Ben's training, but specifically refined his combat skills. It's fairly mindless to cut down run-of-the-mill fascist space mooks with little to no comprehension of the Force, when your average nemesis packs Force lightning, and even your Force-allergic enemies wield four-blade lightsaber cuisine arts. You are truly in the space big leagues. Rey and Luke are big fish in extremely small ponds, much like being the best Smash Brothers player among your friend group. You get cocky, start feeling yourself, and then you're spoon-fed your own butt cheeks when you go 0-2 at a local tourney without taking a single stock from competitors who've played longer than you against a wider swath of opponents. I'm not projecting, I just thought it was an apt analogy.
Yeah, that doesn't sound deeply personal to me.
You know what? Shut up! Kenobi, by Revenge of the Sith, has his mettle tested and found exemplary, unlike the underskilled, undertrained, and undertried kids he's up against. Luke's only real nemesis is the asthmatic prosthesis version of Vader, and Rey gets an emo fanboy with a glow stick and mommy issues. The Weans have, like, one lightsaber fight at a time against one constant foe. Kenobi is a perpetual motion machine of endurance and mid-battle divided attention against a palette of combatants. In one sequence from one film, he breaks General Emphysema's lightsaber puree, engages in hot pursuit on Lizardback before demonstrating multi-weapon proficiency and plugging Grievous with a ledge-dangling one-handed blaster shot, survives Order 66, fucks straight off to Coruscant to slay every goddamn clone in the tri-state area, fucks straight off to Mustafar to battle in a self-destructing lava lair mid-meltdown while tight-roping and free-climbing collapsing towers before carving up Vader like your mom's burnt Thanksgiving turkey via lava flow surfing, all without even taking a break to void the bowels Luke and Rey would have emptied in their own trousers after the first challenge. Luke, on the other hand, never has a marathon battle, and Rey gets winded after some light swashing and gentle buckling, only to be spared by Chekhov's Oedipus complex. Additionally, Obi-Wan is shown to be far more versatile in his utility of force powers in combat, chucking improvised projectiles around like he's mastered Yeet Kune Do, and deploying varied powers where appropriate. Luke never uses powers mid-battle, and Rey seems to forget she can do anything else when using hers, having what amounts to a very blustery stare-down. Best of all, Ben is an experienced negotiator and diplomat, and of all three, the Tome of Eternal Darkness is best relegated to Kenobi and will have the least effect upon him. He is quite skilled at getting people on his side, best demonstrated by his ability to rein in Anakin as long as he did. The wise as Yoda line was not hyperbole. As a traditionally learned Padawan, Obi-Wan is much more adept at recognizing and resisting the temptations of the dark side. We see both Rey and Luke constantly struggling to contain their enticement toward the dark side in their movies. The prequel trilogy is so bewildered by the ridiculous notion that Kenobi is susceptible to hatred and anger that it doesn't even address the issue. It's like, Obi-Wan, tempted by the dark side? What is this, amateur hour? Save amateur hour for the amateurs. Luke and Rey. I see the fight going like this. Obi-Wan absolutely owns in combat, especially if there's any kind of elevation he can take. A slight incline, ambitious anthill, whatever. Both Rey and Luke show that obtaining the high ground is not an automatic win condition for them. Demonstrating his superior combat skills, he senses their heroism and uses diplomacy to de-escalate the situation to complete disarmament. From there, he can sense Luke and Rey's respective struggles against the temptations of malevolence, and like the pure goodness golden retriever Jedi he is, negotiates the relinquishment of the tome to his expert care for casting into the Mustafarian equivalent of Mount Doom. A bit Mary Sue? Absolutely, but shitty writing has never been a barrier to canonicity, and Kenobi benefits from the most OP Mary Sue-ish writing that premier late-stage syphilitic minds can scribe. It's no wonder Vader kicked around Ben's robe after he threw the fight aboard the Death Star. Even he can't believe he got out of that one. Ben Kenobi, throwing lightsaber fights for the lulz. I have spoken.
All right, very well done, Team Obi-Wan Kenobi. Team Luke Skywalker, I hear you used to bullshit arguments in your T-16 back home.
Look, I may barely know a Star War from a Star Trek, but I've been on this ride long enough to know what this fight is about. It's gonna be about how Luke is, as Gay Tumblr called him, a dumb space twink, and you two are amazing space wizards with powers the likes of which would blow our feeble human minds. Well, guess what? Luke is exactly a shiny idiot space baby. I'm not even gonna fight you on that. He's an emotional speeder bike wreck at least 75% of the time. Impulsive? You bet your force-sensitive ass he is. What else do you want me to say about this blonde, doe-eyed infant? He received little formal training. He grew up on a backwater. He kissed his sister. He should have tried to kiss Han because, hey, why not? All of these are true. Incidentally, I don't ship Sky Solo, but I wouldn't kick it out of my browser window either. Okay, look. All of this stuff about Luke is true, and none of it makes him less of an impressive Jedi than either Rey or Obi-Wan. Were either of you trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi at the height of his powers and by Yoda? That's like being trained in how to do art by 2 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles human sonas. Most of us don't get to learn how to draw a cat from Michelangelo and Raphael, you know? Rey was only trained by rugged hermit Luke, and Obi-Wan was trained by Liam Neeson. Luke has the most experienced mentors imaginable. Obi-Wan, an expert in multiple forms of lightsaber dueling and a powerful Force user. Yoda, an expert in all of the dueling forms and a Force user so powerful that he absorbs Force lightning like, it's just another Tuesday in space. That's who trained Luke. I'm sure y'all are going to bring up how Luke didn't get a whole lot of time with his masters. Ding, 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 ding. Correct. But damn if he doesn't become a competent Force user after the entire 5 minutes of training he has to have with Obi-Wan. He can sense and deflect blasts from the little training bot in less than a montage. And by the end of A New Hope, which takes place over, a week? He's using the Force to direct a photon torpedo. For contrast, I have been using my own hands to do stuff since I was born and still mess up right and left sometimes. Luke has the Force for 5 minutes and he's a pro. This guy is a prodigy. I don't know what your characters were doing during their first week with the Force, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't destroying a Death Star. That's just the first movie. In The Empire Strikes Back, he fights full-on Vader one-on-one and even lands a hit against the guy who won the Smash Fiction Sith battle. Obi-Wan, I hear you preparing to say you're the reason Luke's dad is made of spare VCR parts now. But you fought Annie, not Darth. Don't at me. With Force powers, Luke can do all the fancy levitation of rocks, lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp, and then does some sick Force leaps in his final fight with his dad. Luke is a master of using his environment. That Rancor fight, guys. He had no weapons, was in an unfamiliar place, and had to defeat a far more powerful opponent. And he did, because he paid attention to what his resources were, and used that rock to bring the gate down on the Rancor's noggin. R.I.P. that one Rancor. As for talking his opponents down, guys, did you not see Return of the Jedi? I grant you, him turning his dad isn't impressive. It's his dad. What is impressive is that he turned his dad enough to get Vader to pick up Palpatine like he's putting the dog outside and then drop him down one of those handy death chutes that the Star Wars universe is just littered with. Seriously, why is everything the Imperials have designed as a maze of safety hazards? The Tome of Eternal Darkness will not corrupt this ridiculous heart of purest golden bullshit space lad. His own father, who he wanted to connect with desperately, couldn't do it. The evil, wrinkled scrotum in a robe that was using his dad against him couldn't do it. His own anger with the injustice of his life and the world couldn't do it. He's not gonna turn just because some dead trees want to invite him over to talk about an evil set of encyclopedias or a timeshare or whatever it is the Tome of Eternal Darkness lures people in with. Luke is the original. The original isn't always the best, but in Star Wars, I mean, yeah, it kind of is.
Very well done, Team Luke Skywalker. Quick note, Tome of Eternal Darkness made of dead people, not dead trees.
All right.
I mean, I presumed the pages were made of paper. I thought the cover was skin.
That's where we were wrong the whole time.
Take that up with the Hamburglar. I mean, he's the one who tasted it.
You know, when you think about it, the Tome of Eternal Darkness is basically a reverse hamburger, where you have, like, meat on the outside and plant materials on the inside.
All right, Team Rey. Whatever nonsense you have planned, lay it on me. Certainly can't be any more incoherent than Episode 9.
As Luke himself is quick to point out in The Last Jedi, the Jedi Order was a self-centered institution too obsessed with their own navel-gazing to properly defend the galaxy or themselves. Their training in lightsabers and in the Force was extensive, but stultifying, with little to no innovation over the millennia, and it ultimately proved insufficient to prevent the near extinction of the Order. Obi-Wan Kenobi is the product of this flawed order, and his training and skills are similarly flawed. Luke, if anything, is even worse. He received some of this flawed training from Obi-Wan and Yoda, but his training was incomplete due to his constantly charging headfirst into his own daddy issues. That's why Rey is, by far, the most fearsome combatant here, and the one who's going to take the win. She has developed her own style both of lightsabers and of the Force, one free of the ancient blind spots of the Jedi Order. See, Rey has something that neither Obi-Wan nor Luke have: self-reliance. Luke was raised from infancy by a couple of small-time moisture farmers. Obi-Wan was presumably raised by the Jedi Order from a young age. Rey had nothing approaching that type of support in her youth. Everything she had in Jakku, she had to fight for. That's why she's so competent right out of the box in Force Awakens. She spent her life exploring the cavernous wrecks of old Star Destroyers and fighting off both other scavengers and hostile life forms, all just to survive, and all before any inkling of Force sensitivity started to show itself. Speaking of the Force, Rey, with no Jedi training or experience, and barely an inkling of what the Force even is, managed to not just resist Kylo Ren's mind probe, but turn it back around on him and read his mind. Moments later, she then managed to perform a Jedi mind trick on a nearby stormtrooper, causing him to free her, leave the room, and drop his weapon, something completely and totally against his own self-interest. The speed and ease with which Rey picks up Force abilities is basically unheard of, certainly when compared to the other Jedi from the 3 trilogies. Her abilities with telekinesis, clairvoyance, and mind tricks easily match and eclipse those of the other 2, and she's even able to pull off Force tricks that we never see Obi-Wan, Luke, or any other Jedi doing, like using the Force to heal. Of the 3 characters here, Rey has by far the most diverse and unpredictable fighting style. She alternates between a standard and reverse grip with her lightsaber, and is also skilled with a staff, a blaster, and with unarmed combat. She's openly acknowledged in Rise of Skywalker as the best fighter in the Resistance, and her unconventional abilities mean that she can get the better of Kylo Ren, Snoke's Praetorian Guard, or even Luke himself during their brief duel on Ahch-To. She's also the one here best suited to resisting the pull of the dark side. No one ever really tries to tempt Obi-Wan in the prequel trilogy, so his ability to resist such temptation is completely untested. In fact, the one Jedi from Obi-Wan's order with the same level of training and experience that he has, that we see get courted by the Sith, is Anakin, and we all know how that goes. Luke is a bit more reliable, as he was able to ultimately turn away from the dark side despite Vader's temptations, but he still ends up drawing on the dark side during his final fight with Vader, and we see in the flashbacks from Last Jedi that even years later, he still feels the pull of darkness. Rey gets the pull of darkness harder than either of them in her trilogy. Not only does she have the blood of a Sith Lord in her veins, but she has a direct mental link with Kylo Ren, who works his shirtless mojo on her constantly. Despite this constant pressure, the only time we see her even close to succumbing is the brief moment in which she accidentally uses Force lightning on the First Order transport. But that moment really seems to have been a mistake, not a conscious choice, and we never see her come even close to surrendering to the dark side after that point. But the clearest illustration as to why Rey is going to take this one comes from examining the one enemy that all 3 of these Jedi face: Darth Sidious. In Revenge of the Sith, Yoda wisely tells Obi-Wan that he's not strong enough to defeat Sidious. Obi-Wan decides to pack up his extra strong sunscreen and hide out on Tatooine for the next 20 years rather than go up against Sidious. When Luke takes on Sidious in Return of the Jedi, he does slightly better, in that he actually manages to walk into the same room as Sidious. Of course, he ends up a crumbled, lightning-scarred heap on the floor until Vader steps in to do his job for him. Of the 3, Rey is the only one to take on and hand a final permanent defeat to the single greatest villain in all of Star Wars. Sidious could not withstand her, and neither will these 2.
Those were some great opening arguments, but only a Sith deals in absolutes, so now let's give voice to some opposing viewpoints. It's time for rebuttals, and let's start off with episode 1.
Sheev and Anakin. How are you, the argument that he's really good with the dark side and, can avoid it and all of that stuff. He doesn't even smell it when it's in his own house. Do you know what I mean? Is he just so used to it? He is obviously not that good at dealing with it, because he's well, I guess I'll just let this fester until it becomes black mold and we have to burn the house down.
It was something that was afflicting all of the Jedi Council at that time, as they hadn't had the Sith, and perhaps the Jedi Council got a bit lazy, but he was able to step in and have Anakin recognize when he was being called toward the dark side during his trilogies. And he did keep him for a while, but ultimately his fear of losing Padme is what drove him over the brink, as it were, and that got the best of him. It's not solely Obi-Wan's fault.
You were talking a lot about how good Obi-Wan Kenobi is in, like, lightsaber fights, but you have to remember that in the films, the only lightsaber duel that he wins is that last one with Anakin on Mustafar. His duel with Grievous ends inconclusively. He loses to Dooku twice, and he arguably loses to Darth Maul on Naboo. Like, he kills Maul thanks to a lucky break, but when the two actually square off with lightsabers, Maul is the one who comes out on top.
You don't need luck when you're good. Obi-Wan is good, and that's how he split him in half. In the second fight with Dooku, Dooku is obviously very focused on Kenobi because he feels he has recognized the greater threat in that sequence, and thus that's why he's okay crossing blades with Anakin, but he has got to get Obi-Wan TF out of there. And it's not inconclusive. With Grievous, he disarms him literally before Grievous flees like the little bitch he is.
I feel like he's maybe not a tactical genius. Because he just bum rushes Jango Fett and just hopes for the best, and then Jango Fett just gets away. He had so many opportunities to do something other than just run in there and go, "Hey, you, I'm coming after you."
Initially, when his goal is to apprehend the assassin from Attack of the Clones, you're going to have to act in an official capacity. And in order to do that, you can't just go in and like sneak behind him in a cardboard box and then hope that you can pop out and, run him through before the little exclamation mark appears on his head. He's got to do this by the book. And then when he opens fire, then things are off. But sometimes you got to be hindered by the constraints of the job.
So, if the dialogue in the elevator at the beginning of Attack of the Clones is to be believed, Obi-Wan got in trouble and had to have his life saved by shitty teenage Padawan Anakin Skywalker. And by the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, we learned that Anakin has saved Obi-Wan's life 9 separate times if you don't count the time on Cato Nemoidia for whatever reason.
That is stuff that is alluded to outside of the movies. And it's a terrible expository dialogue, like in the first episode of Supernatural, where Sam and Dean talk to each other about information that they know, and it's a trope that drives me up the wall. But the thing is they got to fill in some backstory. It's like, I know you still remember shitty teenage Anakin from the previous movie, but like, really, he's awesome, and let's gloss over some reasons why. But in the movies that are featured themselves, you see Obi-Wan being badass.
And this isn't a point. I just wanted to say, I thought, why did you do that mind trick on Death Stick guy? He was just trying to make $1.
For one thing, it demonstrates that he's just got such a flawless mastery of the Force. He's like, not only do I not want one, you don't want one. Quite frankly, if for some reason I had ever not had asthma and began smoking, I would want the Obi-Wan school of learn to quit smoking.
See, I feel like that level of oversight is exactly what's wrong with the Jedi Order.
Rafael, you were talking as though Obi-Wan in the prequels was just like clearing rooms full of Sith at a time. I will just remind everyone, the judge most of all, that the vast majority of the enemies that Obi-Wan fights are battle droids. Seriously, watch some of those fights. Half the time the battle droids are just sort of like wandering and stumbling around. I would guess, based on my recent rewatch, that like 70% of the time when Obi-Wan cuts down a battle droid, the droid isn't even looking at him. It's just like facing in another direction, just kind of like wobbling aimlessly.
You gotta grind for that XP, bro. You ain't gonna build up your skills just sitting there like trying to meditate and doing nothing in the town all day. You gotta build it up somewhere. Let us not forget that during the middle of fucking Order 66, he decided, you know what? Fuck that. We're going straight into the heart of the beast, and then goes straight into Coruscant and clears the Jedi Temple of all of the clone troopers that are there, all of which are basically Jango Fett at this point. And for that, you still don't see multiple force-wielding opponents in either the original nor the sequel trilogy.
Very well done, Team Obi-Wan Kenobi. Team Luke's opening argument was also certainly impressive, but now it's time to tell him why every word in it was wrong.
In the first episode, we never witnessed Luke actually crossing blades with anybody, and in fact, when he's first training, he gets his ass handed to him by a practice droid set on easy for children.
Yes, that does happen. Yeah, and then he gets better at it because that's how you learn things. It turns out you start out real shitty at it.
I don't know how good he gets with the lightsaber, though. Like, maybe my favorite demonstration of his lightsaber skills is in Empire Strikes Back. Vader is like, "You have learned much, young one." And Luke says, "You'll find I'm full of surprises." And then he does this, like, low-angle, one-handed lightsaber attack, and Vader immediately disarms him mid-attack. Like, if Vader had actually been going for the kill in that moment, Luke would have been Bantha Poodoo.
Oh my god. You're canceled for saying that now. Oh. Okay. But we have acknowledged on this show that Vader is basically the best of the best of the best. I mean, losing to Vader is not a mark of shame. That's normal.
Much like father, like son, Luke, out of all the combatants here, is the only one to be disarmed in quite the literal sense, as Obi-Wan and Rey make it through their respective trilogies pretty much intact.
All right, you're going to have to picture that meme where the guy's tapping the side of his head. They can't cut off a hand. You've already lost.
I think Anakin has proven that wrong on multiple occasions. I feel like Luke is very ill-prepared to deal with, like, force attacks, because when he fights Vader on Cloud City in Empire, Vader starts throwing a room full of debris at him, and Luke is completely incapable of dealing with this. He gets hit by every single thing that Vader throws. Like, at one point, he gets hit in the back, he turns around really slowly away from Vader, I guess to, like, attack the random piece of garbage that's now just on the floor, and then he ends up getting beamed in the head by a different piece of garbage.
I mean, yeah, that was like, what, his first lightsaber battle? I mean, yeah, you're going to make a lot of mistakes the first time you do something. Now he's had 3 movies, guys.
And finally, Team Rey. When Luke said you would not be the last Jedi, he was right in all senses except one, in that you are the last Jedi to deliver rebuttals.
Ew. Luke does that force leap, right?
Uh-huh.
Rey's more of a ground fighter. She's never going to see that coming.
She's never gonna see someone jumping?
Yeah, she's never going to anticipate that. Because he studied with Yoda, who does that little leapy style.
I mean, I really don't think that's the case. Like, Rey is shown to be, like, just an incredibly adaptive fighter. Part of my whole point is just that the vast majority of the things that she excels at in all of her movies are things that, like, she's never done before. First time she draws a lightsaber, she wins a fight with Kylo Ren. First time she is attacked by multiple vibroblade wielding opponents, she kills all those Praetorian guards. The addition of a guy who can kind of jump every now and then, I don't feel like is going to be so outside the realm of possibility that she's unable to immediately develop a counter for it.
Yeah, Rey can be adept at fighting, but she does not have the endurance that being trained in lightsaber combat from a young age has provided Obi-Wan by the time of his 3rd movie. As I had illustrated, he slayed Grievous, went to the Jedi Temple, went and fought on Mustafar, and disabled Anakin, all without taking any kind of a break to eat or, do some Candy Crush or take a dump, whatever have you. Yeah, Rey can be okay, but we see... the 3 activities that you can do.
You can do them at the same time, 3. I think.
Rey, as I pointed out, does not seem to have the endurance she'll get in one kind of not even protracted lightsaber battle, and she's just like, oh, this is tired. Man, I hope that there's some sort of plot contrivance to come and say, oh, there is.
You're making it sound like Utapau, Coruscant, and Mustafar are all like adjacent rooms in the same house, not different planets that you need to take long trips on spaceships to get to. They don't explicitly show Obi-Wan having a snack or taking a nap, or I guess having a dump if we are prioritizing that. But I think it's implied that there are at least a few hours of travel between these different encounters that he has. We may see it happen back to back, but that's not the way it happens in the narrative.
Okay, she's never going to use Force Lightning on the good guys. I just don't ever see that happening. Like, she's not going to engage with that side of the Force.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, the one person in this fight who we see draw upon the dark side to win a fight is Luke. He's the one who's going to be most in trouble with the tome if the fight goes against him. Rey, as I mentioned, only uses Force Lightning basically on accident and then never does so again. She won't use Force Lightning. Frankly, she doesn't need to use Force Lightning.
The thing about Rey and being at least a decent character is that Rey is not, and I'm going to give this credit, Rey is not a shithead. And Obi-Wan, I think, will be able to negotiate with her and sense that she is conflicted and that she does see her own susceptibility, as we see in her final movie, that she is still scared of her potential and her susceptibility to the dark side. If, for some reason, crossing blades with someone who has the stamina of, diabetic gerbil, decides that he can slow the thing down, start negotiating with her, and come up with a plan and illustrate that he's had the training, he's withstood the temptations before, and that he knows how to recognize it, shut that all out, and he has no flirtations with the dark side, he would be able to convince her to say, hey, you need to resist that. It's drawing to you because of your susceptibility. And why don't you allow me to take it and I will have it destroyed?
I don't know about that, man. Like, Rey's arc... Okay, first of all, Rey's arc is a bit inconsistent due to some changes in writers over the course of the sequel trilogy. So it's a little hard to, track her arc cleanly, but I really do feel like Rey is a character who, on the whole, is about taking the traditions that work and throwing away the ones that don't. I think that's the whole theme that they were going for in The Last Jedi is Kylo Ren is saying, let the past die, kill it if you have to, etc. And that's not exactly the right path to take. There's some truth in it, but you don't want to throw away everything. I feel like Rey is not the sort of person who is slavishly devoted to the ideals of the Jedi, particularly by the end of the last movie, and she won't necessarily give Obi-Wan the benefit of the doubt just because he's from an older generation. She still has a lot of critical thinking skills. She can still tell if he's trying to deceive her, particularly if using the Force. I don't know. I just don't find that a convincing argument.
You know what Rey does have a real weakness for, though? Is a troubled young man with daddy issues.
Sure.
Canonically, a real weakness for that.
Sure.
I don't know that she's going to be able to resist the conflicted, wounded, doe-eyed look of Luke.
I thought you were going to say the Hamburglar.
Or the Hamburglar.
Wait, does the Hamburglar have daddy issues? I really must have missed that part of the McDonald's Land trivia. I feel like if she's going to fall for someone, it's a Sith that she thinks doesn't want to be a Sith. Not like a Jedi that sometimes draws on the dark side when he has a bad day. That's just not really...
Like the Hamburglar, right? Who's been manipulated by the Tome. He's a victim of the system, of his upbringing.
I don't want to write this fic, but I kind of want it to exist, where Rey tries to turn the Hamburglar.
I just want the scene where after this, the Hamburglar's standing in an elevator by himself, and he, takes off his burglar mask and smashes it into the wall.
Very well done, everybody. Now, I've made this joke twice before now, but if there's one thing Star Wars loves, it's repeating plot beats. So now it's time for, everyone say it together,
the Force Lightning Round.
Force Lightning Round! Yay!
Yeah!
All right, great.
The fighting is long and intense, and there are a few moments where it seems like the Jedi are going to give in to the dark side to win, but in the end, all three are able to resist temptation. Once the Tome realizes that it's actually not going to get another disciple out of this, it and the Hamburglar flee through a rift in space-time. For a few minutes, Rey, Luke, and Obi-Wan wait for the illusion to vanish and to be returned back to their own times, but days pass, and then months. And these three still find themselves stranded on a desolate planet in an uncharted region of the galaxy. The three try and stay friends for a while, but eventually, they end up parting ways, retreating to 3 different areas of the planet. Because, as you know, whenever a Jedi suffers a truly crushing defeat, the Force demands that you become a bitter hermit for the rest of your life. Decades pass, and with the galaxy's 3 greatest heroes stranded on this uncharted world, a new dictator rises to power, a master of both the dark side and dark magic, known as Waxilium Ladrian, though his enemies know him as Darth Padius.
Sorry? Darth Padius?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay.
But our heroes know nothing of this until the day that a small spaceship lands on this uncharted rock and a plucky new party of 3 promising heroes disembark, a Force vision having told them that 3 old Jedi Masters resided here. Not sure where to start, the 3 split up and travel in 3 different directions, until each arrives at the door of one of our 3 Jedi, asking to be trained. Your time, and our time, is almost at an end, so now let's hand things over to a new generation. Others may indeed continue the fight, but from now on, it won't be us. Instead, we must train new heroes, Smash Fiction patrons, who appear now as whatever fictional version of themselves they were when they were featured in an episode. You are their only hope for helping to prepare them for their final battle against Waxilium Ladrian, which you suspect is actually just a pseudonym for your old nemesis, the Hamburglar. If your student can defeat him and destroy the Tome of Eternal Darkness, then the melding will finally cease, the worlds will once again be separate, and these interdimensional battles of strength or wits or whatever will finally be at an end. What region of this planet, and thus what sort of biome, are you hiding out in when your student arrives? Yeah, you were on a gray blasted landscape before, but obviously the entire planet isn't just one environment. That wouldn't make any sense. You'll probably dismiss this new student at first, so what do they do that changes your mind? What is your training regimen to get them ready for their fight with Darth Padius? How do they look, and what force powers have they mastered when they finish their training, if any? And finally, how does their final battle with Darth Padius, aka Waxilium Ladrian, the Hamburglar's self-insert Star Wars OC, go down? Presumably it's on the bridge of his ultimate battle station, the Death Bun, which for the record, squishes planets into hamburger patties. But you know what? You tell me. The order for the main round was Obi-Wan, Luke, and Rey, so the order for the lightning round will be Rey, Luke, and then Obi-Wan. Dan, what's Rey getting up to in her old age? I hear she's been really enjoying that book from the Jedi Temple that taught her levitation. They say she just can't put it down.
Heyo.
I hope the listener does not take this as me playing favorites whatsoever with the patron that I have chosen. It has nothing to do with how much I value each and every one of you. The patron that I have chosen, who's going to be approaching Rey, is Cam B. So Rey has set up her hermitage in the mountainous area of this mysterious and unnamed world. When the sound of gigantic wing beats reaches her ears, she looks out the window and sees a giant red dragon touching down in her front yard.
What episode was that for? I don't remember Cam being...
That was for Weatherwax versus McGonagall.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Cam, of course, was a coach of a Little League baseball team made up entirely of mythological creatures, but has decided that his skill with a bat should directly translate into a skill with a lightsaber, and is eager to learn what Rey has to teach. Rey looks him up and down and says, "A wise Jedi Master once said that size matters not. In your case, it kinda does. Like, you are a dragon. You are a very, very large creature that it's going to be difficult to train." And Cam says, "Oh, no worries. I'm one of those D&D style dragons." And so he polymorphs himself down into a humanoid form. And so Rey begins to train him. They start doing the usual, like, Jedi training montage things where they're swinging around their lightsabers and they're levitating stuff, and Rey rides around on his back while he's in dragon form. It doesn't actually help with his Jedi training. She just really wants to get that, like, never-ending story feel out of this whole situation. And eventually, they fly up to the Death Bun. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
The Darth Padius's floating battle station of death. Cam is flying up in his draconic form. They weren't able to, like, get Jedi robes to fit him, so they just kind of, like, gave him one of those big cloth belts around his midsection. One thing he is missing, though, is a lightsaber. Like, they were not able to get a lightsaber that appropriately scaled up to meet his size. And so they start flying up to the Death Bun. There's a whole bunch of lasers that come out of the Death Bun and begin to converge together to unleash, like, you know, the giant ultimate planet-destroying blast on Cam. But then Cam opens his mouth. Dragons have this impulse to, like, collect treasure and valuable objects. So he's been collecting kyber crystals and swallowing them whole. And so he unleashes his new breath weapon, which is a giant lightsaber that comes out of his mouth. And he uses this to parry the Death Bun's laser and shoot it back into itself, where it explodes harmlessly.
I do like my buns toasted.
Absolutely.
All right, very well done, Team Rey. Next up, Megan Bob, I have a joke for you.
Okay.
What did Leia say to her brother after the medical droid gave him a cybernetic replacement for his lost limb during his fight with Darth Vader?
I don't know.
Cool hand, Luke.
Oh.
Yay!
Yeah, I know. That joke was a little lukewarm.
Yay! All right. Luke has set up on the agricultural part of this particular, like a lot of rolling farmland part of the planet. And who wanders up is Daniel Kidder.
Sir Daniel Kidder?
Yes, he served corn nuts for the last time in the Kidderdom. And got dethroned, sadly. There was a coup as people were like, no, more hot Cheetos, less of this.
The aughts have come to an end.
It's true.
We must have a change of leadership.
And Luke is eating some corn, and then Daniel Kidder is like going, okay, can you train me? Can you train me? And it's going, no, I don't do that kind of stuff anymore. I just sit around and farm. It's great. Daniel Kidder's like, I can help. I know they didn't want me in my kingdom, but I have ideas, not just corn nut ideas, but I have other ideas. And Luke's like, nah, go away. And then Daniel Kidder, expresses this slight bit of force powers and bonks a kernel of corn off of Luke's head. And Luke's like, I think there might be something to this. And as it turns out, Daniel Kidder does have force powers. They are almost entirely corn nut based. And so the training montage is Daniel Kidder working very hard to levitate a single corn nut. And then levitating 2 corn nuts. And then eventually a packet of corn nuts. And then eventually concentric rippling circles of corn nuts dancing in and out of one another in multiple flavors. Some in packets, some outside of the packets.
No one's ever been able to control more than one flavor of corn nut before.
I know! Cool Ranch and Chili Lime. It's amazing! His weapon then is corn nuts that glow red with hottest chili powder. The chili powder is so hot that it burns through everything that it touches. He doesn't even go to the Hamburglar. He just screams at the sky. I'm like, you coward! You can't handle how delicious these corn nuts are! Come down here and fight me like a Hamburglar! And the Hamburglar's like, I have stolen all delicious foods. I can handle anything. I ate those green chili McDonald's burgers. I've eaten ones that even had a jalapeno on them. I am the master of slightly spicy foods. And comes down to fight Daniel Kidder. Mano a mano. And he gets a bunch of corn nuts in the Hamburglar's hamburger. And mid-battle, the Hamburglar can't. He is such a junkie, guys. He has a lot of problems. And he has to, try and shove a burger in his mouth while he's fighting because, I don't know, part of it's where he gets his powers from. Part of it's just, scratching that itch. And tries it with the corn nuts in it. It's like, this is everything I ever wanted. And he says, I'm going to give up my Sith ways and open my own restaurant. I have had it with being a Sith, and I've had it with being a thief. I am going to devote myself full time to my addiction. And decides to open a space restaurant with many, many burger toppings, but mostly corn nuts. And so Daniel Kidder defeats him, and I guess the Hamburglar probably dies of a beef overdose.
He died as he lived.
Yeah. And then Daniel Kidder goes back with his newfound corn nut bending powers and takes back his kingdom, the Kidderdom.
And finally, Obi-Wan. Feel like I've probably made this joke before, but now this is podcasting.
Oh, God. Into Obi-Wan's sun-bleached hut walks a lonely traveler. It is a single individual who is going by the name of Viola Sanderlin. The first thing Obi-Wan does is, gets rid of that name entirely, because that's not Star Wars enough. So now it is Violas Andalin. And Violas Andalin is a train conductor who is secretly Loki.
Ah.
So, initially, Obi-Wan is wary, one of his students went on to do great things, like kill his former student, and that former student, well, shit's complicated, guys. And so he's feeling a little iffy about taking on yet another Padawan. It's not necessarily the best time for it. He's very old at this point. He's a little more crotchety. He's really trying to work on that crate dragon impression. And so he's really dismissive at first. But Violas convinces Obi-Wan to take her under his wing. He talks to Violas and then says, you know what, I'm really not interested in this. Sorry about the whole naming thing. And he turns around, and yet there is Violas yet again. And he turns back around to the door, and there is Violas. It turns out that she's pulling visual trickery irrespective of his susceptibility to Jedi mind tricks, and because of the noble Asgardian blood that is running through her veins, he senses that she is of bloodline capable of great skill in the Force or magic. Her training conductivity is actually analogous to piloting skills, which is a baseline indicator for proficiency and affinity with the Force. So, first thing he's going to do is find some place akin to a temple to best teach Violas. I imagine the training consists of tried and true traditional Jedi training, levitation, searching of feelings, blinded lightsaber rehearsal, defense against the dark side, potions, Spanish 211, providing a generally more rounded experience. Really try to flesh out Violas as a character instead of just saying, oh, you're gonna Jedi and Jedi only. Ultimately, Violas is going to continue with the training and eventually will earn her garb. The uniform consists of the traditional Jedi garb in a flattering black and emerald green ensemble, which is kind of giving strong reptile or Jade from Mortal Kombat vibes. The powers that Violas has mastered consist of things like projection, duplication, things of the Jedi mind trick, things that consist of trickery and of some deception, while also espousing the emphasis on refraining from using it from the dark side. You know, maybe that's another allure, is that why doesn't Obi-Wan start with a Padawan that's clearly on the dark side and see if he can't get her over to the light side? Because the first one didn't work out so well, so let's flip the script here and see if we can have a little bit better result. And the final battle is in their throne room upon the, the death button. It comprises in the utility of Force imagery and the use of duplication, perhaps with Violas doubling as Patius's right-hand man to slay or defeat him, or falsely projecting herself to be in a location where she is not. Or let's say she even poses as an unassuming object, or a secondary dark throne, or a duplicate one. And Patius must choose which throne isn't going to shapeshift and stab him. And one throne always tells the truth, and the other always lies or says nothing at all. And ultimately either frustrates or confuses Waxilium Lydrian to throwing himself into the core reactor.
Might one say yeeting himself?
Nope. No one would ever say that.
All right. Great job, guys. I gotta go think about stuff. Force things.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck.
I came to a slight revelation this time in my rewatch of all of these films, which is I think in the prequels, George Lucas writes his battles as though the characters in them actually had hit points. Because, like, you very rarely, if ever, see a fight that, like, ends unexpectedly quickly. Like, there's always kind of a big lead up to it. If, like, I was running an RPG where Rafael was playing Mace Windu and Megan Bob was playing Jango Fett, and Jango Fett takes a hit from a Rhino mid-fight, that would then make it easier for Mace Windu to finish off Jango Fett by cutting his head off. Now, normally, those two things are not connected, but if you are playing with hit points, then taking a hit from a Rhino does mean that you are more susceptible to having your head cut off in a future attack. And that is remarkably consistent. Like, Darth Maul goes that entire fight with Qui-Gon and then gets finished off by Obi-Wan, I think because Qui-Gon had depleted a lot of his hit points beforehand. So, you know, don't watch the prequels, but if you must, watch them with an eye towards, how are their hit points doing? I think you will find yourself pleasantly surprised.
I think if you find yourself strapped to a chair and forced to endure some sort of torture, please keep this in mind as you're, battling against the eye clips.
Yeah,
I think you'll
absolutely.
find yourself pleasantly surprised.
I was watching the second one, and it had Christopher Lee in it, and all I could think was, God, the Lord of the Rings films are so great.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I just love Christopher Lee and I miss him.
Oh, I had a moment. I really enjoy coming on this show, but Christ almighty, if watching the Attack of the Clones did not feel like work. And I'm just like, oh God, this is awful. But I had a moment where you have Samuel L. Jackson and Christopher Lee being Jedi and Sith at each other and menacing one another. And I was just like, it's Dracula, and it's Jules Winfield, and it's Lord Summerisle, and I'm just...
all interacting with a Muppet.
Yeah, with a Muppet! With Miss Piggy! Man, imagine being George Lucas, having that raw talent and star power at your disposal, and absolutely fucking it up in every conceivable way.
I guess it makes me feel a lot better about my own artistic achievements.
Because you've screwed up, but you've never done so with Sam Jackson and Christopher Lee. Is that what you're saying?
I don't have access to that level of screw up, and so I cannot make a screw up that bad.
Well, Bob, I mean, to this point, your most recent artistic achievement were the scripts for Garden Plots with Skeletor, which those are pretty universally regarded as new landmarks in the history of the written language.
Yeah, that's definitely what I set out to do whenever I sent that tweet like a year and a half ago and said, I just want Skeletor to talk about his crops.
So this was a very hard one, largely because I think this was one of the first times in a while that there were very few clean hits that were scored on anyone during the rebuttals. Y'all came out pretty strong, and then there was a little bit of dismantling that happened, but largely, these are all pretty good characters. Like, none of them really diminished that much in my mind after hearing the rebuttals. So, first up, we're just gonna eliminate Luke right now.
Really?
He's good.
I'm shocked.
He's totally good, but just like relative, obviously, like, seems the most likely to be tempted by the dark side, and probably the worst fighter. Like, he's good, he's fine, but like, he's just not really in the same category as the other two. I'm really split between these other two. This sort of thing where I could kind of go either way. I do think that Obi-Wan definitely has the edge when it comes to training. The fights that he gets into are a lot more impressive. I am won over by the idea that he generally fights higher caliber foes than Rey has to go up against. He does a little bit more stuff with like throwing stuff at people using the Force, whereas Rey just kind of seems to get tunnel vision a little bit during fighting. But I it's tough because I think Obi-Wan's better trained, but I feel like Rey has a much stronger connection to the Force. I think that she's the more natural, stronger Force user. And I need to see if that's more powerful than all of the, the many years of training that Obi-Wan got. I think that she is more definitively than anyone else here the one who is most likely going to be able to resist a pull to the dark side. When it was mentioned like, oh yeah, she's never going to turn, I was like, yeah, that totally feels right. Whereas Obi-Wan is kind of a question in this field. I don't have a lot of information. Like we said, he's never really been tested. Apart from, I guess, the only temptation he has was death sticks, and he he does say no to death sticks pretty definitively.
And to being cool.
Yeah, all of those after-school programs really hit home with him.
So it's kind of up in the air, but just looking at him and the way we've all been talking about him, I don't think he's gonna turn, honestly. Like, I don't think that he really has that in him. We've never really seen any evidence of it, and, absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. This is mainly a fight, and it is secondarily, can you resist the temptations of the tome? And just because there's more evidence of Rey being able to resist temptation, I could go either way on this, but I feel like for today, I'm saying it's not enough to overthrow, in my opinion, the evidence that Obi-Wan is the better fighter. So I'm giving it to Obi-Wan.
I think that was the right decision to make. And congratulations, Raphael.
Yeah.
You did it!
Turns out you just needed everyone else to get out of your way.
Yeah, And it's not my fault you guys did not see the tactical molehill that I planted there in the middle of the
That's
field.
right. Well, here I lie, looking like an idiot with my arms and legs cut off as I slide slowly towards the lava of defeat. But thanks for coming on and doing some real justice to Obi-Wan. Well, let's bring in our own thanks droid, I guess.
Beep boop. Time for the kid thanks, beep boop. Over to Twitter, beep boop. Thank you to Cosplay Devotee, Cosplay Fiend, Florian, Matt Laserwitz, Icon Jade, Luke Lebers, Sean Boyd, CJ, 3 Owls Screeching, no Smash Fiction, don't go!
Aww.
Decade Fan, Sid Rabbit, Jeff Rick Present, Earth Mofo,
Hi!
Yeah!
M Bond, Alexander aka Ducko, Jake the Fake Jake, bringing it back home, Waffles the Magic Dog, Potluck Dinner, Fatball 69.
Fat Blunt 69.
I would like to dedicate something because I didn't scream it, but I did write down on my paper for rebuttals the blunt of eternal dankness.
Yeah!
Pretty great.
And Vander Turner, beep boop. Over to Tumbles. Thank you to Sid Rabbit Vlog, Fablon69, Fort Dijo Star, Secretly a Skeleton, Andrea Wreaks Havoc, Not Very Bright Raven, Caw, and The Cracked Crack Child. And on Facebook, thank you to Adam Mayo, Jeff Polier, Robert Ramsey, Daniel Kidder, and Tom Groh. And lastly, big thanks to David Waters for amazing fan art of Commander John Shepard.
A.K.A. Commander John Arbuckle Shepard.
It's really tremendous. Y'all gotta see it.
That was a beautiful marriage of both show and fan art, and it is a perfect
So
thing.
good.
Puts the bow tie on the armor and everything. It's terrible and I love it. Just like that episode.
You take that back. I love that episode like my own children.
I'm glad you do. And thanks also to Waxilium Ladrian. Who was to know that Waxilium Ladrian was also a Sith Lord and the Hamburglar? Guys,
Oh, wow.
we have some very impressive patrons. I don't know what we've done to attract all of them, but we love them, and we're very grateful for all the support that they've shown us over the years.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this final episode of Smash Fiction, kind of.
Oh.
Next week, go listen to Garden Plots with Skeletor, but also return in 1 week's time for the third and final Smash Bash.
Smash Fiction is produced by Dan Mulcairn, with logo design by Claire Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod at Incompetech.com for our theme song, Hitman.
You can find us on Twitter at SmashFic Podcast and search for the Smash Fiction Podcast on Facebook, Tumblr, and YouTube.
Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Smash Fiction is made possible thanks to our supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/smashfictionpodcast. Please consider donating as little as $1 each month. It helps us keep the show going, and we have great rewards and extra content for those who help us out.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight.
So we're not only going to see who is the... Oh, that's why. It's... Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's the problem. Someone translated this to Portuguese.
Portugal.
They translated the thing into a map of Portugal.
And as we all know, Carmen Sandiego stole the Portuguese language.
That's right. So we can't say it anymore. We have to say Portugal and just assume that people know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm in universe. Come on.
Sorry, just a couple last notes.
I assume you wrote down lightsaber yeeting.
I wrote Yeet Kundo.
Ah, there it is.
Oh my god, I'm glad you worked your traditional yeet in there, Rafael.
Is that just a, you have to get that in once per appearance? Is that?
It was that I said it once, and then Kit, objected, and I said, oh,
Now
I
it's a
must
thing.
double down. Yeah, now it's a thing.
Just so you know, I'm recording this listening to headphones while Kit is elsewhere in the apartment, and as soon as you said that, her head snapped up, and she was like, I felt a great disturbance in the Force.
The cube landed on the side marked Obi-Wan, then Luke, then Rey. So I guess we're going with that.
Chronological order. Ugh.
Not avant-garde enough for you?
So temporal.
Oh, so linear.
Ugh. So chronological.
Other words for time.
So clocky.
That's the button.